the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. Today, I am sitting down with another MS warrior. Louise is from the state of Florida, and the really cool thing about Louise is that she's been battling this disease for 46 years, and she is just the absolute most positive person that I've ever met, and she is actually an author. And I invited her on to just spread awareness, to talk about her journey. And please welcome to the podcast, Louise. How you doing today, Louise?
Hi, Brian. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on to share your journey. I am just so just incredibly wanting to hear this story. 46 years, Louise, and you got diagnosed in 1979, 1980 when you were having your symptoms. I'm only 9 years old at that time. I just can't even imagine at 19 years old what you were going through. Can you kind of explain to us what kind of symptoms you were having that led to your diagnosis, and you know how your path went before there were really any DMTs out? I'm just so looking forward to hearing about your journey.
Okay, well, in March 1979, I began feeling like a dizziness going on, not where I couldn't, not where it was spinning like vertigo yet, but it was like a slight dizziness, and numbness in my hand, and my eye twitching, and then became painful. So I was sent to a neurologist who sent me to an ophthalmologist because he couldn't really, he couldn't understand why my eye would be hurting. And so I went to this ophthalmologist, and he said, I think you have what's called optic neuritis. And of course, back then in 79, and I'm sure dates much earlier than that, but for me in 1979, they didn't know so much yet about MS.
No.
So they really didn't know what to do with me. The neurologist, in fact, thought that it was coming from my inner ear. I don't know where he would have thought that with the eye thing, but
did they have? Did they do MRIs back then? Just out of curiosity, because I know when I got diagnosed in '97, that was one of the first tests that a neurologist did on me. But we're talking back in 1980. I don't even know if MRIs were around. Was that one of the tests back then?
Well, they were around, but I was not given a prescription to have an MRI.
Okay.
I'd asked him, I said, could this maybe be something like MS? And he kind of thought I was a little wacky, a little crazy, and.
So you actually knew what MS was back when you were 19 years old, Louise, back in 19?
You know how I knew what MS was, and it's really weird. There was a recording artist, Donna Fargo, back even a little, maybe 5 or 6 years before that. She had a television commercial on. She said, Hi, I'm Donna Fargo, and I've recently been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, with MS,
Mm,
multiple sclerosis. And I thought, oh, that's weird. I really like her and multiple sclerosis. I wonder what that is. And so I would ask around, and um, there was a lady, she was a mom of one of the boys in one of my classes, and she walked with braces on her ankles and, um,
yeah,
limp and all that. And
yeah,
so I asked about it. I asked her,
yeah.
I said, I don't want to be rude or anything, but may I ask you about your braces on your feet? And she said, oh, I have something called MS.
Okay.
And I didn't really think anything more about it.
But that
And
was
that wasn't,
but that was your first introduction to what MS was. So you go to your
yeah, it was,
so you go to your doctor and you're like, hey, could this be MS? And this is back in 1979. So how did the doctors actually come up with the diagnosis back then? If they didn't order the MRI, how did they say, okay, Louise,
okay.
you got
So,
MS?
yeah, so then I did learn more about it, and I did learn about MRIs, and I had no idea what it really was. So when you had to go into the machine,
Yeah,
um, that was that was
an
that was
experience.
not a good experience.
Right, right.
But so I asked him. I said, "Well, doesn't do we? Isn't there a way to diagnose that?" And he
Hmm.
said, well, I'm going to send you to an ophthalmologist because, you're having the problem in your eye. And I don't understand the dizziness, but we may have to do some audio tests on you. And
Yeah.
so he did. And then I went to the ophthalmologist and he discovered that I had swollen nerve in my right eye. And
Optic
he
neuritis.
said,
Yeah.
optic neuritis, yeah.
Yeah.
It was so painful. That was a really painful.
Yeah.
And then I went back to the neurologist and he said, no, there's nothing, nothing that we can see that would um, show any indication of, brain tumor or anything like that. And I said, well, aren't there tests to diagnose that? And
Yeah.
he said, yeah, there's MRIs and that kind of thing. And I asked him to explain that to me. But he said, no, I don't think you need that. So I went on my way and then things just, I don't know, and then I went blind. I didn't go completely blind. It was like I had a very dark screen
Yeah.
over my eye, and it was so painful, and the underneath would just twitch and twitch. So I went back to him and I said, listen, this is what's going on. And he told me, well, let's do some audio tests. And we did that. I had to do these water tests
Hmm.
inside my ears, and oh, it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And still came back with nothing wrong, everything normal.
Wow.
But and so I was the one that demanded. Yeah, I did demand. I said, you know what? Look, I want an MRI.
Yeah. Wow.
And so he listened to me, and I got the MRI, and
They found
finally,
they found the lesions and they officially diagnosed you.
well, and this was all in a matter of I didn't get diagnosed until really 2 years later, which would have been 1981.
Wow.
Because I mean, I was running around from doctor to doctor doing test after test, and
Just no and getting
I
no
my
answers. I can't even
there were
imagine.
no answers.
Yeah.
It was horrible. I was a young 19-year-old woman
Yeah.
just starting out in life, and
And I know you
uh,
said, and I know that you said that you were just meeting your husband, and I know that we're going to talk,
yes,
and we're going to talk a lot more about him. But that just like I just can't imagine the feeling, the mental feeling, a 19-year-old girl just starting out life, and you're not even getting any answers, and this is like really before medicine really had that good of an understanding of MS. So
Yeah.
when did the doctor actually like say to you, you have MS? And then what was because there was no treatment path really back then. I know when
No,
when I got diagnosed, there were 3 DMTs. Were there ever even any DMTs out when you got diagnosed?
no, there was nothing like that. And,
So,
uh,
what was like, what was the path of treatment back then? I mean, how did the doctors even like tell you, okay, you have MS. This is what's going to happen. What
yeah,
was the
he
protocol?
didn't tell me that. And all he told me was, well, it looks like, you know, high inflammation and let's try some prednisone. So I went on prednisone. It made me feel better. And we thought, well, this is it. Prednisone helps her. But then that year we were engaged that year. And so that year went along. We figured maybe I was just nervous or something from, knowing that our wedding was going to be coming up in November. And,
Yeah,
you know,
stress related stuff.
it was so stressful.
Yeah,
And, the wedding part wasn't stressful. I didn't feel stressed and I didn't feel crazy.
yeah.
He kept telling me, I think we need to put you on a antidepressant. And I'm like, I don't need that. I don't feel depressed.
Yeah, that's not the problem. I got problems with
No.
with tingling in my hands and my vision and my balance. And,
Yeah.
it's
And then,
yeah,
yeah. And it was just little things at first like that. Um, and then the months went by. We were planning our wedding. Things were going well. I was doing the prednisone.
Mm.
And then we married. And right after the wedding, right after we got home from our honeymoon, boom, I had this huge exacerbation where the vertigo, 6 weeks with vertigo, Brian, 6 whole weeks, nonstop, dizziness like you couldn't. So I had to lay down, and I was a little girl. I'm not a big woman anyway. I weigh about 130 pounds, and back then I weighed like 90 pounds.
Wow.
maybe I weighed about 105.
Yeah.
And so I was on the couch for all of those 6 weeks, even trying to get up from the couch to go to the bathroom. I couldn't even do that. And it was so scary and so awful. I mean, I couldn't even put a drop of water down my throat without throwing it up. And then, so yeah, I threw up and all the time. And I'd just be on the couch. I went from 105 pounds down to 89 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
In a 6 or 8 week period.
So let me ask you this, Louise. You're new in life. You're just trying to get things figured out. Being a young adult, you got a fiance. You're getting married. You're just finding out you have MS. There are no DMTs. How did you even manage that period of no treatment? And when was the first time that you were actually offered a DMT? Because I just think that's just so interesting, like the development of the DMT and when you were offered it, with how your journey went.
Well, and then after, I was on the prednisone, I felt like I got better. I got much better. And then life kind of went on, relapsing, remitting, which I never heard anything about different stages of MS back then. But now I know that it was relapsing, remitting, because then I in the next year, I was doing great and life was going on. And we decided let's try to start having a family. And so I asked the neurologist, can I can I get pregnant? And he said, yeah. So I went to the neurologist, I went to the OBGYN, and they collaborated together, and they found no reason for me because I was a very healthy girl, and they found no reason, and I got pregnant, and Don and I were ecstatic. The whole pregnancy, Brian, there was no sign of multiple sclerosis. There was no kind of yes, there was there was nothing. I was just normal.
So it pretty much went in the remission during your pregnancy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I was so happy and feeling so wonderful. And then I had the baby, and I nursed her for the first whole year, and no signs of MS at that time either. And as soon as I weaned her, like a week later, I started feeling symptoms come back. That little bit of dizziness. I never did have that bad, what do they call it? The dizziness.
Vertigo?
Vertigo. Yeah. I never gotten that again, but I had walking
balance issues.
Balance issues. I found myself hanging on to furniture, walls, and all that. Yeah. For a little, and I was still able to hold my baby and take care of her. I took care of her just fine.
Yeah.
And then, and then it just has slowly progressed from there. From what I was then to now has been a slow progression.
Right. Yeah, and the interesting thing that I found with you is like, you've been in a wheelchair since 1992. So
yes.
Your MS has kind of like attacked your mobility issues, but you never let that stop you one bit. And that's the one thing that I love about you, Louise, is like when I started talking to you, just how positive you are 46 years into this disease and what it has done to you, the mental health part of it. And that's why I like talking to you, just the positivity that you bring out with this disease. But I do want to talk. No problem. But I do want to talk to you about your DMTs. I know that I started out on Copaxone. So when the DMT started getting like more popular in the 90s and you were already in a wheelchair, were they even brought to your attention, and did they put you on any DMT?
Okay, so right after Hurricane Andrew, I think it was 1993 when Beta-Seron was introduced as, and this was a big deal and for anybody in the world with MS. And so they introduced Beta-Seron, which of course is a injectable. It's taken subcutaneously, and I don't remember how often. I really don't remember how often I took that. It might have been just 1 or 2 times a week. And Don would inject me because I was too chicken to do it myself. I just wasn't able to do it myself. So he took on the task, and I did the Beta-Seron. So what happened was the Beta-Seron came out, and it was a lottery system. They didn't have enough supply for everybody to have it. So at first it was by lottery, and my name was chosen on that first lottery drawing. But I decided I'm going to wait and see how other people do with it. You
didn't want to be the guinea pig.
Yeah. I didn't want to be the big guinea pig. And now I think to myself, how awful that I made other people be a guinea pig before myself. That's not nice.
Yeah, but back then I can totally understand what you were saying, because I was in the same boat in 97. There were only 3 DMTs out. And I was sitting there, even my neurologist would be like, when Tysabri came out, I would be like, hey, doc, should I go on to Sabri? He's like, no, let's wait a while. He goes, I don't want to make you the guinea pig. Let's let other people be on the drug for a little while. So, I mean, I understand that. I mean, I've even had doctors say that to me. So I totally understand that, Louise.
Right.
So how did you end up deciding on a DMT, and which one did you end up going with?
So I did start with the beta seron because, of course, it was the first drug out, and everybody was so excited. Oh, maybe this is going to cure me, or maybe that, and it tells you right away it's not a cure.
Right.
You know, it may slow down. It may slow down the progression. And when you're, what was I at that time, like 22?
Yeah. Yeah, you're in your young 20s.
No, I was in my young 20s. And so I'm thinking, well, you know, and it was so expensive, Brian.
Yeah.
The expense of those drugs are so crazy.
Yeah.
And now I see what people go through with, what is it? How do you say Ocrevus?
Ocrevus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tizabri and all that.
Yeah.
And they're a whole lot more than like beta.
$40,000.
Was, yeah, like back then, beta serum was like $1,000 a month, which was
a ton of money back then. Yeah,
this is nuts, you know. And even though the insurance covered and all that, still,
yeah.
And then you got 2 months free. It was 10 months. It was $1,000 a month for 10 months, and then they gave you 2 months free. That was quite a bargain.
Yeah, how nice of them. Wow.
Yes, exactly.
So
I was on that for a couple of years, and I just didn't feel anything happening. And I was a great little mother. I just, you know, my baby was my baby, and I did everything with her that mamas do, and I was able to drive just fine. And so I did my beta seron, but then it just, nothing was happening, and I thought, oh, I don't feel anything slowing down here. In fact, I feel like things are progressing more. And I brought that to the neurologist, and he said, let's try you on something else. So we started on something called Rebif.
Yeah, I remember
and I did
that one.
Rebif.
Yeah.
Yep, I did that for quite a few years. And then it was the same thing. It's like it just wasn't, nothing was, you know, my exacerbations were getting, you know, really intense.
Yeah.
So I said, can we try something else? Yeah. And the last thing that we were able to try was called Copaxone.
Yeah.
And I was on Copaxone for about 10 years.
I did it for 15. I did it for 15.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All together with the interferons, I did about 15 years between all three of them. And then another neurologist said, because I was really fed up with the first neurologist, he just didn't seem to be listening to me, or I think he thought that I was more like of a pain in the ass than anything. And but in all reality, I really wasn't that. I was progressing, and so I went off all of them. I went to another neurologist, and I gave him the disc of my last and final MRI, because he said, you know, the MS has done everything to you that it's going to. I don't believe that, because I still to this day feel like I have, you know, little bits of progression.
Yeah.
And that's 46 years into the disease.
Yeah.
But he read the MRI, and he said there's a big, huge lesion right in the middle of your spine. So he said, I don't think that any of these medications are going to do anything for you. So he took me off of that, and I've never gone on anything else. I do have a, and people may be familiar with baclofen. It's a muscle relaxant.
Yeah.
Because I have terrible spasticity.
Yeah.
And so,
Does that help you? The baclofen?
Okay, so yes, the baclofen, the oral baclofen made me a zombie. I mean, I couldn't, because I had to take such a high dose of it, and that or throughout the day. And then I can't remember what year it was, but the baclofen pump came to be.
Yeah.
Because we were able to liquefy the baclofen and put it into this, it looks like a hockey puck.
Yeah.
And they cut out, the neurosurgeon cuts out a pocket in your belly, about 3 inches from your belly button, and they insert the pump in that pocket, and it has a catheter. The catheter goes up into the intrathecal, which is the where the cerebral fluid flows in your spine.
Okay.
And so they put that, and then they set it at
a certain setting.
They set it, yes, at a certain setting, and drip by drip, continuously throughout the day.
Okay.
The baclofen goes into the into that
bloodstream
catheter in the intrathecal. Yes.
Yeah.
And that baclofen pump was awesome. It by then, at that time, I had to stop driving, and things just progressed to where I couldn't drive anymore, and I had to have people bringing me to appointments and the grocery store and stuff like that, getting my daughter to and from activities. My husband, taking a lot of time out of his day. Thank goodness he worked throughout our area, and he was able to, pick her up real quick, get her to the house, or get her to her track and field, whatever she was doing.
Right.
Her horses.
So let's talk. Let's talk about this, Louise, because I know that you said you stopped your DNTs, and I totally understand why you did. I mean, if you're already in a wheelchair and it's progressing as much as it's going to progress, and you stopped your DNT. But I want to talk, because you keep on talking about your husband, and I really want to talk about I want to talk about the family part, because the conversation that I had with you, I love your story. Please, please, please tell me the story about how you and your husband met 47 years ago, and how he has stood by your side, because I just love the fact that you have a partner that has been there from day one, and he's been fighting this fight with you, and I think it's just important to talk about him, and I really want to make sure that we don't forget to talk about him.
Absolutely. Okay, so Don, he is my everything, and he's so compassionate and understanding and caring and all that stuff. So back in 1978, my girlfriend in Connecticut, that we were best friends up there, and she went down to Miami for college. And so while she was there, she met a young man that she became engaged to. And so I was, she called me and asked me to come to Miami to help her with wedding tasks, making the dresses and filling out invitations and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And so I came down to Miami, and I came down with a boyfriend, and I
left with one guy, came home with another, right?
Yes.
Right.
So, well, no, I didn't come home with another yet.
Okay.
But so anyway, so we're in Miami, and a week later, my friend Tom went back to Connecticut, and I said, no, I'm going to stay here for a couple of more weeks. So I did. And one night, my girlfriend said, oh, we're going to go out with her fiance and his best friend. We're just going to go to a movie and get, a sub sandwich or something.
Yeah.
So we did. And when she was in a back room finishing getting herself dressed and all that, and so she said, we're going to go out with Robbie and his friend. I said, okay, no problem. That'll be great. So she's getting herself ready in this back room, and the door, they knock at the door. So I answered the door, and there is Don Greenleaf, and my eyes meet together, and we fell in love right away.
Love it. It's all she wrote, huh?
It's all she wrote. And so her wedding was in Connecticut. But I met Don down here in Miami, and he was one of the ushers. So he was going up there anyway, and we were going to meet regardless.
Yeah.
And it was just meant to be that Don and I.
Yeah, that is just so awesome. And the part that I love about this story is that, he was with you during your diagnosis and during those times in 1979, 1980. When you were really scared, and 47 years later, you guys are still together, and he has been by your side every step of the way, and it hasn't been an easy road by all means. We've talked about it, and I know that I want to sit down and do an episode with him just to hear his side of being the partner of somebody that's been battling this disease for 46 years. And I just think it's such an awesome story, and how important it is for us as the person with the chronic disease to have that support of somebody, whether it's a spouse or just a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. Yes. But that support is just so important. And I am so happy that you found that guy.
Absolutely. Me too. It was meant to be. God brought us together, and he has kept us together, and he is the father of our child, and he's
the husband of a warrior, and I mean, he's a warrior himself, because I mean, it's not an easy path. It's not an easy path for the spouse. I know.
No, it hasn't been.
I went through a divorce, and I'm not going to blame my divorce on MS, but I'm sure MS had a little bit to do with it. And I know that's a hard road for anybody that is married to somebody that has a chronic disease, whether it's Parkinson's or MS or POTS or whatever. It's hard for that spouse to understand it. And I just think it's just so awesome to hear that this guy has been with you for 47 years of this disease.
Yep.
And the important thing to realize is that since 1992, you've been in a wheelchair, and this guy's been with you every step of the way. To push you around, and just kudos to him. I pat him on the back. I'd shake his hand if I was standing in front of him right now. It's just an awesome story. It's an awesome story, Louise. I just love talking to you, and it's just about attitude. And that's what you have. It doesn't matter that MS has taken your ability to walk away. You are just so positive, and I think that is just such an important message, because for me, that has been the hardest part of this disease. It's been the mental part, and I think that you've got it. You've got it licked. And just, can you talk about some of the tools that you used? I know that we had a really good conversation on just how we try to occupy our mind, because we lost abilities to do things, but we find other things. And you found the gift of writing, and you're an author, and you can talk about some of your books and some of your poetry, please.
I do love writing. I love nature. I love talking to people, and so I thought, instead of making this a completely negative thing, the book number one is it's called Rolling with the Punches: My Persevering Battle with Multiple Sclerosis, and that book was published in 2000, 2017.
Okay.
2, 3, 4, yeah, 2017. And that is it's a nice little book about, the I wouldn't say it's a nice little book, but it's a very informative little book about my journey, how it all started, how Don and I began our relationship, and then having our daughter, and then other things that have happened to me uh, throughout, I would say about 2005, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I published that. It's a nice little, it's got 10 chapters of me and
Yeah.
things I've gone through with the MS, the stages, and
Yeah.
the family, all that. And then in the meantime, I was being mom and wife and all that. And at the same time, those were the years of deep depression and the realization that I'm stuck with this, and
Yeah.
life is just, going downhill for me. And is it going to go downhill for my husband and my daughter? It was scary. Those were scary years. And I started writing about my more negative. Oh, I just dropped
Oh,
I just dropped something.
oh,
My more negative experiences with the disease.
yeah.
So, and I had a couple of people read it and saying, maybe this is not the way to go, because there's such negativity in there,
Yeah.
crazy, not crazy, but my true feelings of, I had daily journal entries in there.
Yeah.
And I just dropped my book that they're all in. Let me see if I just dropped that book.
Oh, you're fine.
But just, and so I had a couple of people read it and say, wow, this is really heavy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I was discouraged. I hadn't even talked to my publisher about it, but I was discouraged by some very close people that, oh, don't publish this because it's just too personal. But you know what? I don't feel like that anymore, Brian, because I feel, I mean, there's some funny stuff in here. It's all absolutely honest of what I've gone through.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a good. I think that's a good thing, Louise. I want to hear honest. I want to hear real.
Yeah.
Even if it is an ugly real, I'd rather hear the honest.
And not all of it is ugly, but it is real. It's intense.
Yeah, and I think that is awesome. I would love to read something like that, because this disease, I can sit here and talk all day long about the negative things about this disease. It's easy to do. But I try to keep it positive too, because if you don't keep it positive, it's going to eat you up. I think
absolutely,
and I think that you have the same kind of attitude. Like, yeah, I'll talk to you about the ugly things about this disease. I'll talk to you about bladder issues and incontinence.
Yes.
And
then Brian, I also sprinkled in there all kinds of fun poetry.
Yeah.
I mean, funny stuff. There's funny things in there.
Why don't you?
There's heartfelt.
Can you read me one of your poems real quick? And just so we can hear one of your, I would love to hear one, Louise, please.
Okay. This is kind of a funny one. So this is called Chronicles of an Invalid.
Okay.
I have multiple sclerosis and osteoporosis. A sty in my left eye. How come all I do is cry? Lymphedema, spasms, don't dare mess with my orgasms. A prescription for some Actonel, a brand new tube of Metrogel. I can't walk and I don't drive, but look at me, I'm alive. They tell me that I'm hell on wheels, and slippers are my new high heels. Diapers are my new endeavor. Thongs, cute panties, gone forever. Well, now that all is said and done, there's one thing left to say. Whatever is or what will be, my hubby loves me anyway. So that's kind of a light side of,
That is absolutely beautiful, Louise. That is absolutely beautiful. I know that just from talking to you, you are just such a lovely person. I love talking to you. You are so positive, and I know we discussed this too. How we stay positive, and I know we had a discussion on, MS can take away our ability to walk. Like it's affected my ability to walk, just like it's affected yours. But the one thing that I'm really, really thankful for, and you are in the same boat as me, is that we have pretty good cognitives still, and I think that being a chronic disease warrior like me and myself. You got to look at the positives. You got to look at the positives of what you still can do. MS, I can't golf anymore like I used to 25 years ago with MS, but I can still do a lot of other things. I still can go out and go fishing on a boat. I can still go and just sit down by the lake and just, just appreciate nature and I appreciate so much more now. At 55 years old and 27 years with this disease, just because MS has made me appreciate just things that I would have looked by 20 years ago,
Right.
And I really appreciate it now. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Louise, what?
Yeah. Pardon me?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You what were you going to say?
No, I grow orchids and they're so pretty. Well, my husband takes care of everything, but I call them mine. And I have a monarch butterfly garden that I love. I've got flowers all over the yard here, and I have the lake in front of me with lots of pretty trees. And then Brian, what I love to do is I'll go out to the front and I will roll all the way almost halfway around the lake, and there's a beautiful and a kayak deck, a wooden deck, and so I go there and I'll listen to your podcast or whatever, read, and I'll just sit on that deck for a couple of hours until it's time for me to come back.
Isn't it peaceful?
Yeah.
It's not just peaceful. I enjoy it. I miss being able to walk around like I used to, but
of course,
I just enjoy things a lot more than I used to. Just little things that I took advantage of and I really didn't pay attention to. Now I just pay attention to things and just appreciate life a lot better.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. And I'll tell you, I am so grateful for my power chair, because it takes me wherever I need to go. I can't drive, but my nurse gets me wherever I need to go. I've got a nice van with a ramp where I can roll in. And my husband and Nicole take me wherever I need to go. My daughter,
it's just awesome.
I just don't stop living. We go to church.
Yeah.
I tried to get into ministry at my church where we were writing cards to, people that are like in nursing homes but I just couldn't do it, Brian. It was just too much for me. So I had to let them know I had to stop, and I felt bad about that. But
you can only do what you can do, Louise. We all it's like a never-ending journey. We always have to figure out, okay, well that's not too much. That's enough. I can do this. I can do that. I can't do this anymore. but we just keep on fighting as warriors, and that's what I love about you. I just love talking to you. You're just so positive, and I just think that you're just you're full of so much information. I mean, between the two of us, we have like 73 years of multiple sclerosis between the two of us.
I know, man, that is.
It's crazy to think about. If you, what would your one message be to anybody that is new into this disease, coming from somebody that has 46 years in with this disease? What would your message be to them, Louise, if they're just starting out on how to just kind of look at the rest of their life now after a diagnosis like MS?
I would say that, there's nothing wrong with being scared. Of course, you're going to be frightened, but don't stop. You know what, too, is journal. Keep a log of what your journey is. It doesn't have to be writing a book or anything like that. 1 or 2 sentences a day. This is what happened to me today, or
just keeping little notes,
new symptom or something like that, and do go out to the fresh air, breathe in fresh air, and clear your mind, and let people help you, because you're going to need that help, because we need that help. Don't just say, no, I don't need help, when you really do. But let them help you.
Yeah.
And smile. Smile at everything.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it, Louise. Every time I see a picture of you, you always have a smile on your face. It doesn't matter. That's what I absolutely love about you. Louise, I really want to thank you so much for coming on.
You are very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I appreciate you so much. If you want to follow me, you can find me on TikTok and on Instagram. You can follow me at MS Michigan Man 64. I want to thank Louise one more time for coming on and sharing me her amazing journey. And just showing people that, just because you get diagnosed with this disease doesn't mean your life's over. You can still have the best life that you want to make it. It's up to you. It's a mental grind, but you can all do it. And you can also find me on Facebook. My name's Brian Wallace. I'm out of Brunswick, Ohio. And I will talk to you all on the next episode. This is the MS Michigan Man 64. I am out.